Hello, everyone. This is episode 3 of my podcast, Field Court Ring. Today, I'm going to be talking about multiple topics. Today, I will be talking about the recent NFL trades, including Micah Parsons requesting a trade and Terry McLaurin. I also will be talking about the recent Hall of Fame Enshrinement and Induction that happened on August 2nd, which featured Hall of Fame inductees Sterling Sharpe, Eric Allen, Jared Allen, and Antonio Gates. Third, I will talk about the recent NBA contract extensions for De'Aaron Fox and Luka Doncic. And finally, I will talk about the top 25 coaches poll that was released on August 4th and my personal thoughts in reaction to it. First, I will be talking about the Terry McLaurin requesting a trade, which happened on July 31st. Important to note, though, McLaurin was second in receiving touchdowns with 13 during the 2024-2025 NFL season. He had 82 receptions for 1,096 yards. He started in all 17 games, and after the 2025 season, his contract ended. The reason that I think this is weird is because they brought in Deebo Samuel, an aging wide receiver, and it hasn't been more perfect for Terry McLaurin to, show how he's how he can be an elite wide receiver. Jaden Daniels is like the perfect quarterback, well, not perfect, but, a great quarterback, just with his rookie season, who he did outstanding, especially beating the Detroit Lions in the playoffs at Ford Field, which is just impressive. But for Terry, I looked into it, and after his contract ended, the main reason he's requesting a trade and decided to hold out is because he wants to get more money. According to Ian Rappaport, who reported this on July 22nd, he wanted to get north of $30 million, and he wanted to be viewed as a top-end wide receiver in the market. So overall, I get where Terry is coming, but honestly, it's kind of weird. Just in my opinion, if I was a wide receiver on the Commanders at this point and I just had Jaden Daniels as my quarterback by itself and we, just beat the Lions in the playoffs, I wouldn't be asking to be for money, but I mean, hey, that's his opinion. Overall, I think it kind of makes sense, kind of doesn't. It really depends how you look at it. But next, though, the more important and I guess the more talked about trade request was Micah Parsons. He requested a trade on August 1st with an Instagram post that was just really personal. It wasn't loyal talk like a bunch of these other people do, where they request a trade and have the lawyers or PR team do it. No, it was from his notes app, just Micah Parsons telling how it went. Some stats before we get into it: he was tied 5th in sacks and with 12th for the 2024-2025 NFL season. He had a total of 43 total tackles and 2 forced fumbles, yet he only played in 13 games as he suffered a high left ankle sprain in Week 4 against the Giants. After lots of holding out since last year, he held out because just like Terry McLaurin, last year was his last year of his contract. It was a 5-year deal. And his 5th-year option was reportedly worth about $24 million, which is lower than the market value. For comparison, TJ Watt, his new extension earns some $43 million a year. And from what I've understood, Micah Parsons, especially in his not notes app, but in his, formal, just telling his side of the story, he pretty much was okay, I don't care what the Cowboys pay me. I will leave money off the table. I just want to play as a Cowboy. And Jerry Jones, being Jerry Jones, didn't want to pay him. And, paid CD, paid Dak, makes sense. But for whatever reason, Micah Parsons is, completely different. That's a little odd. Calming Jerry Jones to hold out and then get burned, which is what's going on now. And now, Micah Parsons, requests a trade, and everyone's, looping him with a bunch of teams. I know people have been talking about the Steelers, because he grew up in Pittsburgh, even though it's the Steelers for myself. That's not happening. I'm being sorry. According to DraftKings odds, the Cowboys are still, I think, about minus 300 favorites to retain Micah Parsons. And then the Eagles of all teams are plus 1,000, which is just odd, especially because they're interdivision rivals. And then after that, the Patriots. I don't really know why the Patriots are there. I guess because they're, in a little bit of a rebuild. But that would, be interesting. I think most likely what's going to happen is Parsons going to return to the Cowboys. I don't really see either Terry McLaurin or Micah Parsons, actually moving teams. I think Micah Parsons is the most, out of the two, the more likely because, of the personal apology and everything. And it's he definitely tried, and it's been, at least from his point of view. We don't know Jerry Jones' point of view, really. He hasn't really said much from his side. Parsons was okay, I want to be a Cowboy. And Jerry Jones, didn't pay him, still hasn't paid him. We still got about a month until the season starts. I think actually it's a month to... Actually, yesterday I think was a month today, because I think the first game is September 4th, which, unironically, is Eagles versus Cowboys. So I think both Micah Parsons and Terry McLaurin will get a deal done, and I'd be shocked, especially if Micah Parsons leaves, and Terry McLaurin too. I'd be, a little bit shocked. Actually, I'd probably be more shocked with Parsons, and I'd be just shocked in general with Terry McLaurin, especially because of the situation they have. So yeah, that's my opinion on the trade talk. Second, though, Hall of Fame induction and Enshrinement. I know not a lot of people care. It happened on August 2nd during Hall of Fame week. The main thing is that the Lions, lost the Chargers 34-7. I wrote an article on that. I wasn't too happy as a Lions fan myself. Besides that, I feel like no one really was talking about it. But I just wanted to highlight the two key inductions, in my opinion, which was Minnesota Vikings, Jared Allen, who in his Hall of Fame speech, gave great message about his family and how he wants to be, remembered outside of football. And I just want to read this excerpt from his speech. He said, quote, "Well, I'm here to tell you too," speaking to his daughters, of course, "you are my greatest accomplishments. When I get called home to heaven one day, if all they talk about is this gold jacket, my career, then I failed miserably as a father, as a husband, and as a friend." Which, coming from Jared Allen, just outstanding, thoughts that, even though he's known for a football player, who that matter most, is his wife and his kids, being a good husband and being a good father, importantly, so props to him. On top of his Hall of Fame induction, Jared Allen during his career had 5 total Pro Bowl selections. He was named as a first-team All-Pro 4 times. He led the NFL in sacks twice. He holds the record for the most safeties in NFL history with 4. Very impressive. And he also holds the single-season franchise sack record for the Vikings. On to the next, Hall of Fame inductee, spotlight, I guess, is Los Angeles Chargers Antonio Gates, who had a, just heartwarming yet sad message about how he was dedicated to his father. As he said, quote, "Although this bust may have my name on it, it has my father's fingerprints, his legacy, and his spirit. So Dad, rest in peace and I love you." That, of course, is dedicated to his father, who passed away, I believe, this past year. So rest in peace to Antonio Gates' father. But just like Jared Allen, he had an impressive NFL career. All 16 of his seasons, actually, he was a Charger, which, we don't see a lot, especially with Jared Allen, who I know, after he left the Vikings, was on a couple of teams, including the Chicago Bears and the Kansas City Chiefs. But unlike Allen, Antonio Gates stayed at one team his entire career, which spanned 16 seasons. And in those 16 years, and 16 seasons, he had 8 Pro Bowl selections. He led the Chargers all time in receiving yards, receiving touchdowns, and receptions. And most, I guess, known and most important, he has the NFL record for the most receiving touchdowns by a tight end. Just impressive. No doubt, Jared Allen and Antonio Gates should have been inducted into the Hall of Fame. And also the other 2 players, Eric Allen and Sterling Sharp, no doubters. So props to those guys for, being recognized on the highest stage that they can as NFL players. Their legacy will live on for time. And just congrats to those 4 inductees. Thirdly, NBA contract extensions. Recently, on August 2nd, Luka Doncic was given a 3-year, $165 million contract extension with the Lakers. This season, just some background information, he averaged 28.2 points per game, 8.2 rebounds per game, and 7.7 assists in a career of 50 games played last season, which is impressive, especially with only 50 games played. He led the Lakers in points, rebounds, assists, steals, and 3-pointers per game after making his debut with the team on February 10th. Now back to the contract. In my opinion, it's a very good deal by the Lakers, as it gives LeBron a solidified star point guard, and the continuation of this deal could allow for the Lakers to make another playoff run in the next couple of years. Overall, I think it's good that the Lakers, solidified Luka Doncic is, a Laker. And I think for the price point at $165 million for 3 years, I think it's a very good deal. And I think it gives them, just another player that, they can use, especially with Luka's caliber, as we've seen with the Mavs and also with the Lakers, the team he's currently on. I think the Lakers just, got a really good extension, and their future's looking pretty good. Now, on to De'Aaron Fox. On August 4th, it was revealed that he signed a $229 million 4-year, let me repeat myself, on August 4th, De'Aaron Fox got a 4-year, $229 million max contract with the Spurs. Background information, in 62 games, he averaged 23.5 points per game, 6.3 assists per game, and 4.8 rebounds per game. The contract itself is very good as he becomes the face of the franchise with, of course, Victor Wembanyama until the 2029-2030 season. With De'Aaron Fox, the Spurs also have rookie point guard Dylan Harper, who they took in the first round of this year's NBA draft, and they also still have reigning rookie of the year, Stephon Castle. All this combined, I believe the Spurs can be a playoff contender. And just like the Lakers, I think the Spurs are in a great position, solidifying a star player like De'Aaron Fox. And I think just, again, like the Lakers and just both teams, I guess, have a bright future ahead of them, getting their star players to stay and, just keeping them for the next couple of years. Now, lastly, I know this episode is going to be a little short. I apologize. I don't have a co-host. I decided to, do a little, test, in a sense. Solo hosted myself. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. If not, I'll hopefully be able to bring back me and one of my co-hosts, or just have a co-host in general for my next episode. But that'll be in the future. But on to this last topic that we're going to talk about today is on August 4th, the top 25 coaches poll for the upcoming college football season was released. I'm not going to go through the list. You can find that yourself. But these were the key standouts, in my opinion. I personally believe Ohio State should be number one. I know Ohio State lost, key players like Travion Henderson, Will Howard, and Jack Sawyer. Both Will Howard and Jack Sawyer went to, my team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, while Travion Henderson went to, the Patriots. And quinton.journalist also, too, but, we'll talk about him later, But he's in, little bit of an issue here with, his jail time and whatever, but he's placed for the Cleveland Browns, so he's in a little bit of a mess. But I just think that, Ohio State won the national championship last year. I think the coach should be number one. I know Texas is rated highly, especially with Arch Manning, and they didn't really lose a lot of key players from what I researched. So I just think Ohio State should be number one. I believe Michigan, what they're positioned at 13 is highly overrated. As a Michigan State fan, I'm obviously biased, but I don't see how Michigan, as a team who, I don't even remember the record, I think they only had 9-10 wins last year. Everyone's talking about, Bryce Underwood, 5-star quarterback, future of the program. But, I just think Michigan is just highly overrated at the 13th spot. The other thing is, a fellow Oregon fan myself, Oregon should be over Clemson. I know Clemson is retaining Cade Klubnik, and Oregon lost a key player in Dylan Gabriel. I believe they are getting back Evan Stewart, though, so I think especially because Clemson did not make the college football playoff that they should be 7, Oregon should be 6. But honestly, I think because Ohio State did, just kind of destroy Oregon as much as I want to forget about that, I have to admit it. We did get destroyed against Ohio State. I think that's, probably the main reason why Oregon is sitting below Clemson right now at the 7th spot. And Clemson, did have a really good season as they nearly lost to Texas last year in the conference championship game. So I still think Oregon should be over Clemson, but I'm not too upset with it. And also, SMU, in my opinion, should be a little bit lower as they did lose key running back Rashad Smith to the NFL draft. That's really my only reason. I just think they're a little high. I don't really remember the position. I think they're 17, 20th ranked. I think they should be, a little lower. And I didn't write this on my note sheet. But I think Boise State at 25. A lot of people are going to be mad with it, but, they did lose to Penn State in the first round of the college football playoff. They are in a not-so-good conference. There's a reason Ashton-Jeanty was as good as he is. I'm not discrediting him, but, when you're going against opponents like Georgia Southern, your star players are Ashton-Jeanty, actually. They're really their only star player, if I'm being honest, is bound to shine. So I think Boise State being at 25, as makes, I know a lot of people, as I mentioned earlier, would be a little upset, thinking they'll be a little higher, but I think them at 25 is like, Boise State, we know what they did last year. I think just being in the AP top 25 coaches poll by itself at 25 is, respectable enough. And if they can, somehow, without Ashton-Jeanty, continue their success or, just have a pretty good season, I think they'll show out through that they earn their spot, and maybe they do deserve to be higher, as what some people think, but also maybe if they have a little bit down of the season from last year, which I expect they will, because they don't have Ashton-Jeanty, a lot of people will, be second-guessing their thoughts, thinking that they shouldn't be in that top 25 coaches poll. But, that's all my thoughts. My next episode, I will be having a co-host. At least I'm planning to. Most likely, I will return with my friend Joseph, as we'll probably be talking about recent UFC events. I don't know when I'll have the episode posted. I might do it after the Duplessis Khamzat Chimaev, Justice Duplessis title fight. But I might also do it, after this next fight night, since I didn't release an episode talking about it this week, or do really any articles recapping it. So yeah, that's the end of episode 3 of Field Court Ring, presented by yours truly, Quinton Reynolds. Thank you guys for listening, and have a great day or night. Peace.